So as I lift the bike up, you can see that that was about a ½ inch of sag. It's not 1 inch, it's not 2 inches, it's about a ½ inch of sag. So that's not ideal. That's actually too little. If I take the bike for a ride, I'll probably find that the front end is too stiff. Here's my work area. I don't own a really fancy garage, and I don't always clean up after myself, but I get the job done. I'm going to be replacing my front tire today, but I'm also going to try to change the oil on my forks to a lighter weight. I have changed the springs on my forks, and then I have added fork emulators from YSS to allow me to ride off-road. It has been wonderful so far, but through the spectrum of the riding that I do, it does tend to hit the bars a little hard when things get difficult. So I'm going to put in lighter fork oil to change the whole spectrum of the way the bike operates and feels on the road. Here's my very strong garage swing mount. This swing is for my NC700X, and I will be hanging my NC700X from this mount in my garage. Remove the windshield because you might break it off. When you're slinging your bike up, you want to make sure that you bungee it first, front and rear usually, before you put on the come-along straps. Or if you want to call them ratchet straps, that's fine, but they're so tough you can use them to pull a car. With this particular setup, if you fail to bungee it first, you can pull the bike right off of its center stand. The bike is literally swinging by its back tire and those straps. So the bike is now slung from the ceiling, and most of its weight is being carried by those straps. So what I'm going to do is probably put the center stand down and then reinforce the strapping. Now that I have the wheel off, I'm going to remove this fender, these guards, and the front forks. And then I'm going to dump the oil out and replace the oil on the front forks to change the tuning to improve my overall ride quality. Remove the top of the fork tube. You don't want to use a big wrench for this. Use a small one. It doesn't have to be really tight. You want to be able to do this with light pressure so that this doesn't get seized on to the top of your fork tube. Okay, I have the fork tube fully extended. I have my special tool that keeps the fork tube fully extended, and I'm going to insert the measuring tool at the top and siphon off the remaining fluid. It looks like to get the job right, I had to use up almost all of the fluid. So now I know how much to use in the other fork, and I can begin siphoning off the 104 millimeters of oil so that there's 104 millimeters of airspace in the top of the fork tube. When you take your measurement, make sure the fork tube is all the way up. Make sure it's fully extended. I'm going to use this wire tie that I've kept on my fork for, I don't know, 3 months now. I'm going to slide it down to here to hold this fork tube up, double check it, stick the measuring device in, take the measurement, and then suck off the top portion of the fluid until I get 104 millimeters. And this may be a little hard to see, but I am siphoning off 104 millimeters of fork oil. Now, one of the things the book says is you have to compress the fork fully without the parts in it to get that level. Well, that's a mistake for me. I had all the parts in when I checked the level and set it at the factory settings. So I did it wrong. I had the fork fully extended when I ran the test. When it's compressed, obviously the fork level would be a lot higher. So I'm going to go back, and with the parts in the bike, I'm going to remove, well, not 215, I'm going to remove 220 from the top of the fork and see if I get proper behavior. 215 was good. I want to take more out, so we're going to do 220 and see if we get another centimeter of travel out of that. See I'm drawing air. Take the tube and slide it out as best you can and turn it over. Take the fork oil that you've siphoned out and squeeze it back into the bottle. Tighten the cap of the fork tube down. You don't want to use a big wrench for this. Use a small one. It doesn't have to be really tight. You want to be able to do this with light pressure so that this doesn't get seized on to the top of your fork tube. When you go to take your final draw of fluid, make sure that the meter is in the proper position against the back of the fork tube. If you really think about this, this becomes a spill issue, so you really want to protect the side of your bike with a rag and some tape. When you're doing this work, you really have to get used to the idea that this is going to take some twists and turns, and you're going to have to position the hose correctly to get the meter just right against the back of the fork tube. Once you've gotten used to 3 or 4 of these and blown the hose and shot the liquid halfway across the garage, you'll get it done. It just takes about 4 or 5 pulls of this smaller syringe. Always have a backup plan. If you rely on one piece of equipment, such as a syringe, you're going to fail. Take your time and rinse off the bike. Make sure you rinse off the bike really good, so if there's any remaining droplets of fluid on the bike, you got to make sure that they're all washed off and rinsed away, because you're going to get fluid on the cables, you're going to get fluid inside the fascia, you're going to get fluid inside of the windshield, because I got it all over the garage. Okay, so almost immediately after reducing the oil level, I've noticed a little bit of a gain here just by shaking the bike. We're going to do a quick test out the driveway here. Down there and back, we're going to hit that bump at the end of the driveway and see if we can get that to double. I've just finished installing the fork guards. I've taken the measuring devices and pushed them all the way to the top of the forks. I've given the bike a test ride, and, well, frankly, I really like it. So this is way better than my original setup. The reason why I think it is way better is because instead of getting about 5 inches of travel before it slams, I'm probably going to get about 7 inches of travel before it slams. So that crash bar is still a little loose. I probably want to tighten that up just a little bit more. This is the one I crashed on. This is still a little bit bent, but this crash bar is still a little bit loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten that up a little bit more. Hopefully that won't snap. I crashed this on one of my other videos, the dirt riding learn to turn video, so that's just a wee bit loose. I just want to make sure that that's a little snug all the time. And as you wipe down your bike, you're going to find spots where oil went that you never thought possible. That oil from the forks goes everywhere. So just wipe it down real quick. You don't want to be too perfect. If you're too perfect, then you're no longer human. So just to compare, that's a lot tighter. So I'm going to have to tighten that back down. See, you got some water spots everywhere, but I'm not going to care about that so much. I'm going to go ride in the dirt. So there you go. One suspension tune. Really did a great job too. I'm happy with the oil level because I knew I stepped down to that level as opposed to just guessing it and hoping that it's right. So I'm very pleased.